Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
Ah, okay. So you said applause or, oh my gosh. Okay. Oddly enough, it is something funny.
Welcome to the Comedians in Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Teri Cleary. Teri, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me, Keenan. I really appreciate that. This should be
Absolutely.
fun and hilarious. And
We'll make it no
uh,
matter what.
yeah, we will. We will. I am Teri Cleary, otherwise also known as the Bionic Siren. And I've had that name since it's my gamer tag, actually. It started as my
Oh,
gamer tag. I use it for all my socials now. And now it actually is even more fitting that I'm a voice actor. So,
very cool. So you're in the gamer, actually playing games or in the environment?
no, I play
Okay.
games. I've been a
Awesome.
gamer my whole life since Atari.
Haha.
Yeah, that's my generation. And I've never not gamed. I've gamed up till just 5 minutes ago.
Oh, fair. Awesome. Well, what's your favorite current game, the latest game that you like?
Well, one of my favorites that we play almost every single day right now is Diablo 4.
Okay.
I also like Outriders. I play a little bit of that. Single player games. I like playing Horizon, Zero Dawn, and the others as well. Skyrim is my all-time favorite game.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are going to associate with that. So, Terry, you ready to get started?
Yes,
All
let's do
right.
it.
Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see the 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. All right, so the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any joke. So Terry, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Uh, I definitely believe that is true. Yes.
Okay. So how about the role of persona in comedy? So how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
Say that one more time.
How much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
Uh, the comedian is an actor. So
Okay.
I would say that although authenticity matters a lot, they're still ultimately actors. Whereas the comic is telling stories based on their life experience.
Okay. So, um, so how is the comedian as an actor actually being funny then?
Well, they're funny because they have great timing. They also, linguistically, they know how to put words together that will make people laugh. They they aren't just telling a story maybe based on their own experience. They can look outside of their own experience, look to, the world, look to populations, look to governments, look to all kinds of things to really make comedy. So, whereas I think the comic really is mostly just drawing on their own life experiences.
Okay. So then does authenticity matter or is illusion part of the magic?
It does in both, because I think where the comedian They do their homework, even though maybe it's not relative to their actual life. They do their homework still before they take a bit of comedy to the public. They do their homework on the subject. So, and that is part of their job. And this is why I say they're actors.
Got it. Okay. Well, speaking of acting, how about punching up versus punching down? So, where do comics versus comedians stand on this? And let me put it in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester? Beady, 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 beady.
Ooh, that's a good question. Let's see. I say punching up because I am forever an optimist. So, just from that strict point of view, my worldview, I say punching up because I think even if you start as just a comic, you can punch your way up to becoming a comedian because you can be taught and you can learn from other people in your industry to improve upon that and become a comedian who is a sought after person on stage, who is a sought after person, in whatever genre they're in as far as comedy. So, I think it makes you marketable. And I think punching up is always the best. And I
So,
think, making sure we're limitless as far as you can punch up too.
okay. So, can you punch up with jealousy?
Oh, sure you can. That is a
Ah,
great motivator.
okay. So, that's still positive, though.
It can be, although you wouldn't want that jealousy to consume you
But it,
emotionally,
but it is,
mentally. You
if
wouldn't
it's a
want that.
motivator, but if
Say
it's
it
a
again.
motivator, is it, as a motivator, is jealousy still positive?
Jealousy, I wouldn't say is positive. No, but it can be a motivator.
Okay, fair enough. We'll give it neutral at best. So is the audience agreement with the comedian a form of permission or alignment?
The audience, say that again?
The audience's agreement with a comedian, is it a form of permission or alignment?
Um, Not necessarily, I would
Okay.
say. I think sometimes audiences are driven in certain ways. And I think, and it really depends on the setting, I think, too. It really just depends. Are you in a comedy hall
Hmm.
or are you on a TV set?
Got it. Got it. So that, is that what you mean by audiences driven? Is their goals are different in these different settings?
Yes, I
Okay.
would say yes. And not only that, but you think of, a TV set is a much smaller audience
Hmm.
than a hall,
Right.
or a big venue. So, people can really be driven by the other members of the audience in a huge hall. I mean, think something just like anywhere else, just start like wildfire and go. Where
Right.
in a
So let,
smaller audience, which I think is tougher, way tougher is the smaller audience because, they're closer to you, they can see everything. And so, they're relying on you to entertain them, not just the audience and you.
fair enough. That's a good point. I'll definitely, I'm going with you on that one. So let's see. How do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
Well, that's partly language barrier. It's partly, cultural divides. I mean, it's a lot of things. It's also politics. It's, you know, anything that would be different from our culture to someone else's is going to make a difference in how comedy lands.
So then, is truth the meaning of facts?
Well, that depends on whose truth it is
Hmm.
and whether or not they know really how to
How to which part?
tell the truth.
So
And
if I say,
some
uh-huh.
don't necessarily know they're not.
Okay. So can is this so how about truth minus meaning equals facts?
No, not necessarily. Truth
Okay.
minus meaning equals facts. No, definitely. Uh,
Oh.
no, because I mean, you want the truth to have meaning because
Mm.
that's why you want to tell the truth. Is for it to have meaning. You want people to know something for a reason. And hopefully it is the truth. If it is the truth, you'll be more passionate about it. So, yeah, I guess you can, there's
This,
signs, I suppose, too.
yeah, this is the epitome of the ultimate word game in the metaverse. So I don't see a right answer or a wrong answer in any way. So would you say that comics are more universal while comedians are more culturally specific?
Uh, Say that again. Comics.
Are more universal while comedians are more culturally specific?
Um, no, I wouldn't say that. No, because again, I think most comics are drawing from their own life or personal experience. So I'd actually probably say it's more the other way around.
Okay. All right. Crowd work versus crafted work. So if comics riff like influencers in the comment section and comedians perform like in reaction videos, where's the sweet spot?
Well, again, the sweet spot is the comedian has to do his homework. If he doesn't do his homework, his comedy isn't going to land, no matter what he does. Because unless you have a true understanding of what it is that you're saying, because remember, um, comedians have writers. They don't just write themselves, but they also have writers. So they have to interpret the verbiage from the writer to make that comedy land. Because if they don't interpret it correctly, it's not going to land with the audience.
Okay, fair enough. So what happens when a comic leans too much into crowd work?
Well, if a comic leans too much into that, in other words, so a lot of times what they have are like people in the audience who are like their friends or whatever, and they're responding to certain, jokes or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and they too, in that respect, run the risk of not coming across as authentic to the crowd because they're up close and they can see,
Okay.
right? They're up close and they can see, especially if it's in a small venue, the audience can see that stuff. They can just see it and they can smell it a mile away. I mean, this is why, top of the line movies get, Oscars because it comes across as authentic.
So what
And when you
about
don't, it's never going to land.
it'll land, it'll just land flat, right? It's a
Well,
big
it'll
old
land flat. Yes, it'll land flat. I mean, some people might like it. I know, people are into all kinds of comedy, and even that kind of comedy has its place.
right?
So yeah, yeah, it's
Like
great.
a belly flop is a certain kind of cannonball. Would you agree?
Exactly, exactly. And
Okay,
people like that in movies. They think it's all funny. Oh, look
right?
at that, yeah, kind of thing.
Laugh at anything. Okay, very important question. Advertising and self-promotion. So who advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast to get the message out today. See you soon.
Uh, oh, now there's a couple ways to take this question. So if I went in the literal sense, I would say that first part of it again.
Who
What are they
advertises themselves more?
advertises themselves
Yeah.
more? So probably the person who advertises themselves more just by definition of how I see the breakdown, is going to be the comic.
Okay.
Okay, because he doesn't have name recognition a lot yet, right? He doesn't have nationwide recognition more than likely yet. So they're more local or, cultural kind of things because again, they're drawing from their own personal experience.
So is self-promotion seen as selling out, or is it necessary for survival?
No, it's absolutely necessary for survival. And that includes for the comedian.
Right, absolutely. All right, censorship and offense. So does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point, like a magician?
I don't think either should avoid it. Because comedy is also a temperature gauge of a culture, right? Comedy is that temperature gauge that we see, and they sort of drive some things forward. So I think, and I'll give you George Carlin for an example.
Mhm.
Everything that he said back in the 80s, everything he said is happening exactly right now as he said it would.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, when you can have that sort of foresight, it's an amazing gift. And a lot of these, and it doesn't matter whether you're a comic or you're a comedian. I think this is something that actually applies across the board because you can't be either without that.
All right. So
At
then
least you wouldn't be successful.
fair enough. So then who survives better in the cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
I would say the comic survives because, again, they're usually drawing on, their own life experiences, and therefore most of it isn't going to be offensive. And they also know who their audience is, because they're more intimate audiences. And so they know who their audience is, and they don't risk it as much anyway, where a comedian will because he's been tested. He's made it to that point because he's been tested time and time and time and time again and has proven that he's a funny person or she's a funny person and can bring audiences to, buy movies, tickets, whatever. So, yeah, they run the biggest risk.
Okay. So how about timing and delivery? Science or art? More context. So does a comic rely more on structure and a comedian more on rhythm and emotion?
No, I'd say they both rely on both equally because, again, I don't think you can be a comic or a comedian without. You have to be a good storyteller no matter what.
Mhm.
So if you're not a good storyteller, you can't do it. Plain and simple. Same with, being an actor. If you're not a good storyteller, you're not going to be a good actor.
Fair enough. I'll go with you on that one. All right. Laughter versus applause. So are comics chasing laughs while comedians are chasing applause breaks or a primetime Emmy that validate the message?
Ah, okay. So you said applause or
Laughs
laughs. And
or primetime
who's
Emmy.
Yeah, or a primetime Emmy. In other words, who's getting more of what?
Well, who's chasing what?
Oh, who's chasing what? Well, hopefully they're both chasing both. I mean, you want to have the applause, right? Because people might nervously laugh,
Mhm.
but typically you're not going to applaud, again, unless you're, driven by an audience, but which I guess is applause. But I think I think applause is probably more authentic anyway. And I think, because they're at a comedy event, so people feel like they should at least laugh,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
Because you did go to this event for that reason. And so, I mean, I get that's just my psychology of it. And I think they both chase both. And I hope that they do, because one isn't necessarily a gauge of the other. So,
All right, fair enough. So comedy is commentary. So when does a comedian cross into becoming a philosopher or a preacher?
when does a comedian come across, run the risk of sounding like a
Absolutely.
philosopher
Or a preacher.
or a preacher? Well, I think one, it depends on the audience who's listening, because one person to some is going to sound one way and to others completely different. That's just at least where we are in this society. It may not be other places, but I can only draw from my experience here. And that is that it depends on the audience you're in front of, especially if you're a comedian, because you would have a larger reach. But if there's a part of that reach of an audience that doesn't like what you say or doesn't agree with what you're saying, or, and we see this all the time, and this is how cancel culture happens. Um, if they don't like what someone's saying, they just immediately don't like it or don't like them or want to cancel them, or you know what I mean? So, yeah.
So is it good or does it dilute the humor?
Um, what, to create controversy?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's good. Because it gets more people to tune into that. Because if you have a message and you're trying to have, you know, people listen to that message, and the more impactful you think it is, you do kind of want to create some controversy. And this is in other words, you know how we talk about, certain actresses or whatever will create negative press about themselves just to create press. It's sort of the same thing. And it works the same way. So
Fair enough. All right. Terry, you ready to enter the multiverse?
yes.
Okay. Board game Zoomcast, play verse performance. If comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
No, I'm definitely doing the first.
The colorist?
Yes.
Okay. So does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
Ooh, that's good. Well, so again, as storytellers, our job is to paint a very vivid picture in your mind.
Mhm.
So you do have to tell it in a colorful way in order for people to really picture it and then have that reaction. So,
Okay. Fair enough. All right. So, here on the Comedians and Elevators podcast, we've got a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And Terry, the previous guest was Eric Troy. And his question for you, Terry, is what is your first memory?
oh my gosh. Okay. Oddly enough, it is something funny.
All right.
The very first memory that I have as a child is me running down the hall toward our kitchen. And I was round about 3. I was a toddler. Um, but I remember running toward the kitchen, and my mother just happened to be like changing the garbage. And I just went right head first into it, running into it. And I remember that very, very, very vividly. Like
So your
I know
legs
what
are
I was
dangling
wearing, and I
above.
know I even had little pigtails, and I remember it very vividly.
You had like an out of body experience at that moment.
I must have, because man, it's seared into my brain. I mean, I had cute little pigtails, and my mom had little bows in my hair. I remember it very, very, very vividly.
All right.
Yeah. Now tell me if I remember anything after that until the time I was like 25, and I'll tell you now.
Right. Fair enough. Okay, last question. Legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Tight Five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
I hope it's the first. I
Okay,
hope
the
that
common
that
sci-fi.
gets, yeah, I hope that that sort of thing gets more remembered than someone's point of view that may alienate other people.
All right, fair enough. Well, Terry, where can everyone find you online?
Okay, well, I am on all my social medias under Bionic Siren, and I do political commentary and content. And I am, let's see, I'm on the Radiant Business podcast. I also do, or well, it's out of season right now, but I do a live show called The Weekly Release, where it's every Friday on TikTok. And um, and that'll start again in December and run for 12 weeks, and then off for 12 weeks. And then I'm just starting to do a live political show on Wednesdays
Very
on
cool.
TikTok.
Very cool. All right. Well, Terry, thank you so much for being my guest. And for everyone else, please like and subscribe. And we will see you in the next one.
Thank you for having me.